You are listening to When Life Gives You Lemons, the podcast that speaks to high-performing individuals who have been through adversity but come back stronger. I'm your host, Emma Levy, a physiotherapist who has helped elite athletes on their way to Olympic success. This podcast was born following my own trauma when I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of just 36. Sat in the chemo chair, I set myself the goal of starting a podcast to explore resilience and the importance of mindset. During this Olympic and Paralympic special mini-series, I'm speaking to some of the Team GB athletes who travelled to Paris for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. We aim to delve into how it truly feels to represent your country, the training, the build-up, the pressures associated with that, and how these guys prepare for the biggest stage in the world. Today I'm welcoming Blaine Hunt to the podcast. Blaine is a Team GB C5 Para-cyclist winning a Paralympic silver medal in Paris 2024. As a teenager, Blaine sustained trauma to his right leg during routine knee surgery when the surgeon's drill slipped and severed his popliteal artery. Following the trauma, he developed complications which subsequently resulted in nerve damage and a restricted ankle joint. This disability enabled Blaine to be eligible to compete as a paracyclist, and following many years of hard graft, Blaine was selected for the Great Britain cycling team in 2021. Throughout his career, Blaine has become world champion 3 times and is a world record holder, but Paris was his first Paralympic Games. Blaine, you've been on the pro circuit for a number of years, but this was your first Paralympic Games. Are you improving with age?
Are you saying I'm old?
Not compared to me.
I feel like it's more down to training age. I came into cycling quite late. I was about 27. So I feel like I'm improving at a later stage in life because I've taken it up later. So there's lots of gains to be made. Whereas, you know, some of the Paralympic lot, they start when they're 14, 15, earlier, and then their training age is already pretty peaked, whereas I've still got lots of low-hanging fruit to pull off the tree.
So you're catching up with them. How and when did you get into paracycling? What's your story? What's your disability?
I went to watch one of my friends. Well, okay, we'll roll back a bit. I went on a ski trip with my friends. I didn't think I'd be able to ski because this is all post-injury. And I thought, I'll just go. It was like 300 quid. I was like, I'll just go. If I can't ski, I'll just go for the nights out afterwards. So I skied with them, and I thought, I think I'm actually better than them, and they've not got a disability. So then when I got back, they were doing talent IDs at Hemel Snow Centre. So I went down there. Some people watched me ski, and then I started getting invited on to GB training camps.
Was this for the para-ski team?
Para-ski team, yeah.
And had you considered para-sport at this point?
No, not at all. This was like the penny dropping for me. So I was mid-20s, but so I'm 10 years on from my injury. No one had said, have you thought about parasport? I was just kind of in like what I would maybe purgatory, like a period of my life where I was going out having a good time. There wasn't really any direction. I was just trying to earn money, go out and have a good time, earn money, go out and have a good time. There was no forward planning. I feel like it was a bit of a void, and I feel like it could have been, my energy could have been channeled into better directions earlier. But eventually I found parasport. I started skiing with the Great Britain ski team, went out to Hintertarks, did quite a few training camps with them. They have their international classification once a year. So I drove out to a place called Landgraf. I think I've said that right. And I actually didn't get classified for skiing. They said because my disability is more in my lower leg and ankle, when I go into a ski boot, it's more of a fixed position. And so they can't classify me for skiing, but they can classify me for snowboarding because it's a soft boot. And I can't snowboard to save my life. So that was the end of that.
Had that not been recognised by the British ski team in advance? Was that a bit of a shock?
It was a little bit frustrating, but before I went for classification for the skiing, I went for classification nationally for cycling to prove to the ski team that I was classifiable for parasport. So there I already have the seed of, I know I'm a C5 paracyclist, and then I was just pursuing the skiing. With that in the back of my mind, roll forward a few years later, I'm in London. I go watch one of my friends at the velodrome here in Stratford, and I thought, actually, I could probably do that. They have it's like a race every Thursday during the winter. It's called Winter Track League. And I thought, I could do that. So, and I'd be all right against able-bodied. So I signed up and I started to do my accreditation. You have to do like 4 stages before you can ride the track and before you can race. And accreditation stage 1, I see this guy there. He's got shaved legs. He's tanned. He's got like a full skin suit on. He's got like pink arms on it and stuff. And I thought, bloody hell, that guy's mad keen to be like, full kit for just an accreditation session. Second session, after I've passed level 1, I go to level 2. He's there again. So I start speaking to him and I said, I've just, hi, my name's Blaine. I've just got back from working on the Olympics in television in Rio. And he goes, I've just got back from Rio. I'm a cycling coach for the para team. I was like, funny you should say that. I'm a C5 Para-cyclist. He goes, no way. Why don't you come? We're doing talent IDs. So I think within 10 days of that, I was up in Manchester doing a talent ID. So that's how it started. You go on a watt bike, they test you for 6 seconds and 3 minutes. A lot of people shout at you, and that's how it started. I just recognised that I was rugby, cricket, tennis, hockey, boxing, kickboxing, like you name it, I did it, and I was like, this is my opportunity, and so I just put everything into it from that point.
So the stars aligned that day, but after your injury, so you were 15 when you had your injury, is that right?
Yeah, I was 15.
And you said rugby, cricket, hockey, all of that. Yeah. Did you play all of that sport after your injury?
No. So once I had my injury, I was in hospital for 9 weeks and I spent about a year in a wheelchair. And that was because where the nerves had been damaged, and some of them were severed, they were... Apparently a nerve grows, maybe you can correct me, but apparently a nerve grows about 1 millimetre a day. Yeah. And the window for opportunity for nerves to grow back and start reconnecting with their long-lost friends is 2 years. So I was in a wheelchair for about a year and I couldn't, my foot was just in a position where I couldn't move it. So I got a really bad, something called a foot drop, which is where I was in the hospital bed, my ankle was effectively floppy and then my Achilles tendon was just shortening and shortening and shortening because I couldn't pull my foot up. So that I was in a wheelchair for about a year, so obviously there was nothing going on then. And even at that point, no one said there's this world of parasport. And I tried to get back to playing rugby, and that was always the dream.
Was that with a foot drop?
That was after I had something called a Z lengthening of my Achilles, which is where they cut it in a particular way to lengthen it and put it back together. And so
you had the power at this point to move your foot?
No.
Okay.
So my foot looks like I can move it, but there's zero function in the nerve that should be doing it. It's other stuff that's moving it, but it hits when I pull it up, it hits a block and it can't go any further. Mm-hmm. And so, the dream for me was always to play rugby. That was, it still is. If that happens, it happens. Never say never. And so when I was at school, after that year, when I started to get out of the wheelchair and I didn't really need it anymore, I was always in and around the rugby team. I was actually water boy, the film. I was water boy, and I had a shirt made with Bambi written on the back because at that point I had the really bad foot drop. So when I ran on with the water bottles, they said I looked like Bambi on ice. So that's how bad we're talking. Anyway, roll forward. I have lots of surgeries to try and correct as best they can. And then I started trying to play rugby again. I was playing touch rugby. I played touch rugby up to the highest level you can play in the UK, which is I think they call it Super League.
Okay. That was with a dodgy foot.
It was with a dodgy foot, yeah. And I kept on getting tearing my plantar fascia. Yeah. And it was really good until the opposition realised I could only sidestep. If someone tried to sidestep me, if they go to my right-hand side, I'll get them. If they go to my left-hand side, no chance. So I kind of came a cropper. They just knew what they needed to do. So I was kind of the middleman, but I couldn't run like I used to. I used to play on the wing, so I was fast. I ran the 200 metre for school, 100 metre for school. I was very explosive and a fast athlete, and all that speed had gone. So I turned into more of this kingpin, a 10, a 9. And then playing touch rugby, I get picked up by a National 1 side and they start saying, we know about your injury, but we need a 9 to play. And I'm thinking, this is it, National 1. This is one below the Premiership Rugby. We're in. And so I start doing training sessions with them, running through the moves, all of the drills. They're swapping me in for their first team scrum half, and then I'm due to play on the weekend. And I shouldn't be doing this really, but I'm due to play on the weekend, and we've got a semi-contact session on the Thursday. The ball squirts out the back of a ruck. I turn round and I just dive on it and slide on it, and then this huge guy just dives on top of me, absolutely unnecessary. And then I sit there. I sit up, everyone's moved on, I sit up and my arm's behind me, and then I just reach around, grab it, pull it round in front of me, feel this horrible crunch, and I'm like, I've dislocated my shoulder. So I was like, that is something telling me that we're not playing rugby. That was that. And it was pretty bad as well. I had to go and have surgery on it as well. If I lifted my arm up, it would basically just fall out the bottom.
So that was the end of your rugby career.
Yeah, but never say never.
Do you think someone should have kind of pointed you towards parasport back in those days?
Yes, 100%. I feel like there's missed opportunities in hospitals where, I'm sitting in these waiting rooms, I'm watching BBC News. Why is there nothing on there to signpost people towards parasport? Everybody at the hospital, apart from the people working there, have got something wrong with them. So if they feel like they might be eligible, or you plant a seed and they know they're eligible, it might be what they need to be able to focus and channel themselves into something that's positive for them. And even if it's not to go to a Paralympics, it's just to be involved in sport and have a positive mindset and make a new group of friends, people that have had similar experiences to you. And yeah, I can't tell you how many hours I sat in waiting rooms and there was nothing.
I'd like to think we're better these days, because that was over 10 years ago. I think that would be different these days. Do you agree?
Well, I was chatting to, I can't remember who I was chatting to, someone that works in the hospital, and they were saying that, if you have a spinal cord injury, they're like wheelchair basketball, right? Yeah. Or wheelchair rugby, whatever. But I feel like, I don't know, I haven't been in these waiting rooms, but I'm pretty certain it'll be like BBC News or Sky News on still, and it'll be a horrible environment to just sit and wait in. I really don't feel like it's changed. I feel like the obvious injuries, yes, but the ones like me where I'm a C5, so there's 5 categories in cycling, and I'm a 5, so I'm effectively the least disabled. You could have someone, you get Pro Tour riders, car opens up, they hit their head, they take a bang on their arm, and it's a serious accident, and they've got nerve damage or something. All of a sudden, they're eligible for parasport.
Yeah.
But do they know they are?
Yeah.
Maybe the cyclists do, but I think if someone in London here gets hit by a car, has nerve damage, do they know they're eligible? I don't think they do.
Well, it's quite funny you say that, because after my surgery, I actually do have some nerve damage in my arm.
There you go, C5, in you come.
And I said to my husband, Johnny, a couple of years ago, I was like, you know what, Johnny, I think I could classify for parasport. And he was like, are you joking?
But it's funny, when I was 14, I broke the nail on my thumb, and I thought, this could be it.
So I think, we can't all be classified, but I think not enough people know about it. You are right.
It also depends on the sport for the classification. Obviously, I didn't get the skiing one. I feel like, in terms of skiing, I should have been eligible. It's quite tough, because it's a tough job to do, to classify someone, because some of it's subjective, some of it's not. But the subjective stuff is kind of a grey area. So I failed that classification, or didn't get that classification, based on subjective things. So it's quite frustrating, but it's a real tough job. But yeah, something that might not classify you in one sport doesn't rule you out for all sports. So I didn't, cycling, I kind of stumbled across and fell into. It wasn't something that I wanted to do when I was younger. I feel like it's important to have a clear view on what's an opportunity and what's not, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it since I've started. I'm still enjoying it now, so I'll continue to do it. And your goals and ambitions change. And I think it's important to realise that. And that's maybe what I was missing when I was younger, where I was very focused on trying to play rugby again. And I feel like I just needed a shift in mindset. And I feel like I've got that now. But yeah, I did miss a little bit when I was younger.
Yeah, and you said you're a C5 cyclist, so that is the least disabled. But it's an invisible disability, isn't it, yours? So you see you walking and a normal layperson wouldn't necessarily notice that you do have a disability. Have you had any issues with that, like people kind of challenging you and saying, oh, you're not bad enough to be on the paracycling team, etc.?
I haven't had anyone challenge me. I mean, we make jokes about classification when we're like in the team, but no one really challenges and says. But I quite like it when people ask, because not a lot of people feel like they can ask, and they're like, oh, do you mind if I ask what's your disability? And I pull up my trousers, and then I've got a dent in my leg, a scar down one side, a scar on the other side, a scar up the back, and it's very easy. If I just go into a slight squat, my heel comes up off the floor, and then they go, so then they can see it. And then if once you've told them that, then when I walk off and they look at me walking, then they can see it. But if they haven't had that bit of information, then they can't see it. So yeah, it's an invisible disability, but I definitely feel it like day-to-day living. And yeah, I mean, I just encourage people to have if they're unsure, ask the question, because, and also if you've got an invisible disability, it's not. I feel like there was somebody, I don't know who it was. There was a quote from the Paralympics that said it's not a disability, it's another ability. Mm. I think that was it. I can't remember.
It's like your superpowers. It's the superhumans theme, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like you're overcoming something on a daily basis. Like you build up a certain amount of resilience to that. And I think it's important to realise how much that can shift your mindset without even realising, and help you in other aspects of life.
Yeah, and that's what this podcast is all about, really. Yeah. It's people that have been through those difficult things and got stronger because of it.
Yeah.
But also your disability is due to the fault of someone else. Have you had to work through that? Has there been, were you angry at the surgeon for making that mistake and things being missed, etc.?
I wasn't angry. You've got to remember, yes, something went wrong, but the surgeon was only trying to help me. It wasn't, it was his fault. He was drilling. He was maybe doing and part of the operation that he didn't necessarily need to be doing. And that's what we found out afterwards. But at the end of the day, he had his plan to help me, and he wouldn't have done it on purpose. So I just feel like right from the beginning, I had that opinion that he's trying to help. It's an accident. And then, if I've pursued something afterwards and tried to get compensation, it's not personal against him, because he was just trying to help me. But he's impacted my life to a point where I felt like I needed compensation. There are things that I'm going to struggle with as I go on later in life that are the result of his actions. And that's why hospitals and things have these funds available and teams that deal with, like claims against things that have gone wrong, and they've got insurance for it. So, at the end of the day, he's only trying to help and improve my life back to where it was. Yeah. And it's just unfortunate that it went wrong.
So that's amazing. So mindset-wise, you were never angry, you never blamed him, you just thought he's made a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, what more? I don't see any other way you can look at it. Like, I'm more angry that I can't play the sport that I loved anymore, but it's not his fault. Like, it was my fault maybe that I ended up having to go and see him in the first place. I was playing rugby. I got injured. Yeah. That wasn't his fault. That was just an accident.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's amazing. So let's talk about your cycling.
Yep.
You went to Paris. That was your first Paralympic Games.
Yep.
You weren't selected for Tokyo 3 years ago. Was that a bit of a shock?
It wasn't a shock. I was coming through pre-Tokyo. I definitely wasn't selected, and then it got delayed by a year. And then they had like an in-house, this is all COVID times, they had an in-house hit out, which was just the athletes, no one watching, and I set a good time. And then they were like, oh, maybe Blaine's coming through, and this extra year is what he needed to be able to get into the games. So then I got brought onto the squad. So, and I knew I was on the fringes, but I wasn't a dead cert. And I was only really focusing on the 1 kilometre. And so I only had one event. They look at multi-medals. So if I was going for the 1 kilometre, the 4 kilometre, the team sprint, the road race, the road time trial, then I would have more medal opportunities, especially if I was performing well in those. But I was working full time, and I was trying to juggle working with training, and so I feel like my progression was slowed down. So then I came onto the squad in that year, and I was on the very fringes. I didn't quite make selection. I was a reserve. So I was training right up until the point they went, in case I got the opportunity to go. It's just unfortunate that I didn't.
Because you've got a documentary, don't you? A short documentary online, which, I could direct people towards. And in it says that for 8 years you trained and competed independently, but you weren't taken on to the programme. It says you weren't accepted, despite being the national champion and the fastest C5 1 kilometre rider in the country. But being the fastest rider wasn't enough.
Yes. I feel like there was a title of another one we did. It was called Fastest on Paper. And they always used to use that against me. They'd say, oh, that's your time, but this is the time from the last Paralympics. And we all know when you go to the Paralympics, the kit and equipment steps up. People have a Games PB and they have a normal PB. And there's a reason for that. It's because UK Institute of Sport, help with kit and development through the year, and then you get it at the Games to kind of solidify that gold or silver or whatever it might be.
Did you feel rejected? Being that you were the fastest, you had this world record, did you feel rejected not to be selected for Tokyo?
I just felt frustrated, really. But when you look at it, I look at it now, it's a very tough position because for the selection panel, they've got a finite amount of spots, male spots, that you qualify in the 3 years in the lead up to the Games. So say you've got 8 spots, you fill that with 8 male riders. Yeah, you have got people that are locked on with more medal opportunities, and I get that. But that's the sport. Like, not everybody can go, and that's why, I'm very fortunate, and I'm now in a small group of people that have been to Paralympic Games. But it's important to realise it's not easy to get there. Not everyone gets to go, and I missed out. Maybe my personal strategy for getting there, just focusing on the 1 kilometre, didn't work, but it was tough while I was working at the same time. So this cycle's been slightly different. Lottery funded. After the first World Championships after Tokyo was my first world title, and I fully testify that being to having the extra support from UK Sport and the lottery, and then from there I've just progressed with that extra support that I needed. It could have come earlier, but it didn't.
This episode is sponsored by Recovery from Joint Operations. They are a premier supplier of bracing and cold compression solutions, and the only bracing provider able to supply the highest quality knitted supports, complemented by a full range of framed braces. They offer a solution at every step, from elite sport to surgical recovery, and all of the products come with full clinical support and advice. As a physiotherapist, I've seen these in action at the Olympic Games in Paris and can personally highly recommend these products. Get in touch for more information. The website is in the show notes. Because you were doing it all off your own back in advance to Tokyo. And
Exactly.
So you're self-funding everything. And I think that's very difficult, isn't it? Because you're having to work full-time. You're having to juggle your job with your sport. You're having to pay for your physio. I don't know if you were paying for any psych, any nutrition support. And I think people actually don't realise how difficult that is.
Yeah, you're effectively, at that point I was effectively competing against British cycling to try and get a spot on the team. So when I went to a national championships, I'm spending money on wheels, tyres, wax chains, bike frames, skin suits, trying to pull in and speak to people and find out, what's the fastest helmet, it's a mountain of money that British cycling have, and I don't. I got myself into a lot of debt trying to get onto the team. and I feel like I still haven't fully recovered from it. But it's so expensive. You're competing against the team to get onto the team, so it's tough.
That's so hard. And was it difficult to remain motivated sometimes when it's so hard?
I feel like when someone says no to me, it then makes me want to do it even more. So when they're saying at a program review, you're not coming onto the program, I'm just thinking, I'm coming onto the program. So in a way, I feel like overcoming that, they didn't realise they were doing it, but they were just firing me up even more, like just more. And every time it was a no, I'd go to World Championships, I'd get silver or bronze, and then I'd be like, right, you got to put me on the program now. And then they're not putting me on the program. And yeah, they just put more and more fire into me. And it was actually, there was a point where COVID happened and I thought, you know what, if I race, I'm just going to enjoy it. I'm not trying to hit this time and beat these people on the program anymore. I just want to enjoy it. And so I gave up on getting onto the program. I get to go to the World Championships once a year. I'm fast enough for that. They select me. At that point, I'm the world's fastest ring-in that they've got. You know, they phoned me up, Blaine, can you come to the World Championships? Yeah, I turn up, I deliver a medal. I'm like, you know, what more can I ask for? So I kind of gave up, and I was just like, I'll just have fun.
Yeah.
And then that's when they put me on the program. So
it's funny that though, isn't it? Once
funny.
you stopped trying,
Yeah.
so I suppose to prove to them, you know, take me. Oh, they were like, okay, come on.
Yeah, maybe it's because of the communication. I stopped just giving them like a hard time and trying to get them to put me on. They were like, oh, Blaine's changed. On he comes.
So did winning a silver medal in Paris feel even sweeter off the back of that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I put so much into this from a personal perspective. We have the support staff and I've got my British cycling coach, but at the end of the day, it's me who puts in that bike. The bike sessions that are going into my training plan are my sessions. I'm deciding when I'm going to do them. I'm deciding how my build's going to look, how my taper's going to look. And although I'm working with the British cycling coach, it's very much me that's delivering that program. And I feel like it's particularly satisfying because I feel like I've taken myself to that point. Obviously, there's support staff. You've got the S&C coach, the medical team, the physio, the data analyst. All of that aspect of it, like, is huge as well. But it's nice that I've personally been in control of my on-bike training in the lead up. And you know, if I go on a camp, I'm organising what I'm doing on the camp and how that looks and structuring everything. I feel like, yeah, it's satisfying to know that I've put that together and it's delivered a medal.
Yeah, and how did it feel then standing on that podium, having won that medal?
Yeah, it's very surreal. Friends and family there watching, huge crowd. It was absolutely, I couldn't have asked for anything more. It was incredible. And I get a lot of comments now that, you know, I show someone the silver and they go, next time a gold. And I'm like, it really doesn't matter. Like you're the problem there. I don't say this to them, but the problem is they're focused on the outcome.
Yeah.
Whereas I was focused on having a good time. The fact that I've got this silver medal is great. But the truth of it is, I've just had the time of my life. Like I've just spent 5-6 weeks with my mates. We've had a laugh a minute the entire time. And I've got a silver medal at the Paralympic Games. My family's all there and they've watched it all. So, I mean, what more can you ask for?
Yeah, how special is that?
Yeah.
So this special Olympic Paralympic mini-series, I think nearly every athlete I've spoken to who medalled out in Paris said how important it was to enjoy the journey and to enjoy that process rather than just focus on the outcome.
Yeah.
And so that's so interesting, isn't it? What you just said, you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, as soon as you start focusing on the outcome, you bring extra stress that you don't need. Like if I'm worried about the race that's coming up, I'm not focused on what I'm doing today. If I'm worried about how I'm going to perform at Nationals in end of February, and I've got stress for that, I'm not focused on this podcast. So I feel like it's important to be like in the moment and give 100% to whatever you're doing. And for me, once I shifted to that mindset, I feel like that's when the results started to come. And I just have a good time, and the byproduct of that is medals.
And with no funding, and like you said, you weren't on programme for a number of years, you must have had to make quite a lot of sacrifices to get to where you are today.
Yeah, it's hard to summarise the sacrifices that you go through, but there's obviously a huge financial sacrifice. There's sacrifices that happen with relationships, friends, family. You're missing out on those birthdays, weddings, things that brings everyone together, and you're there slogging away trying to do something else. It's a sacrifice. It's selfish. It's tough, and it takes its toll. My nan passed away while we were in holding camp. I didn't tell anyone. I kept it to myself, and I should be there with my family, but I'm 200 miles away in Manchester on a holding camp. So it's
you didn't tell anyone. You don't want to tell it your team. You don't want to share it with them.
No, because I want to be in the moment. I don't want the team to then treat me any differently. I want to be focused on what I'm doing. So I felt like I had to kind of compartmentalise it, take it in. Okay, I've been delivered the bad news, deal with the bad news, and then I need to focus on what I'm doing here and now, because I can't impact anything. That's an external factor that I can't impact. But what I can impact is the factors that I'm in control of right now. So I feel like I had to deal with it, and yeah, that's part and parcel of it. Like it's a selfish and cruel world that is elite sport, and just things like being a dad. I'm trying to train for the Paralympics, and I've got a 1-year-old that's trying to swallow pebbles. And the amount of, now that I'm back post games, my body's in pieces. The amount of times that I'm getting up off the floor, helping her, I sacrificed a part of that relationship in the build up to the games, and my wife was very hands on with her, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without her extra level of support. And I don't know how she did it, because when I get left alone now, I feel like a fish out of water. But yeah, there were, I missed out on bits of her upbringing that I wish I was able to have a bigger part in. Yeah. So it's just things like there's sacrifices and choices left, right, and centre that all mount up, and yeah, it's hard to list them all.
What drives you to make those sacrifices? Is it the love for cycling, or is it something more?
I feel like there's only a finite amount of time and a small window of opportunity where I'll be in a physical position to be able to do what I'm doing. And so I want to make the most of it. I recognised the opportunity when I went to that talent ID, and that is the opportunity. I took it. I'm living that opportunity until another opportunity comes my way, and then I decide to take another path. If I stop enjoying the cycling, and I find another opportunity, then I'll go for it. But at the moment, I'm very much enjoying it. So I find a deep level of engagement in the sport, and I feel like I just have such a good time. I guess that's the drive. The drive isn't the medals. The drive is just to have a good time. I feel like it's important to not even, a lot of people just focus on the medals, the results. But for me, I'm all about just having a good time, because if you have a good time and you're enjoying it, then the results come. And I cannot bang that home enough to anybody that's involved in sport. When I see youngsters come onto the programme, they're stressed, they're worried about the result that they're going to get, the time that they've got to get for X reason or whatever. Their parents are there, their dad's in the crowd, and my dad's going to be annoyed at this, my mates are there, they're going to be pissed off if I don't win, they've come all this way to watch me. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. Are you having a good time doing this? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then go for it and enjoy it, and just enjoy that, and then go and enjoy your friends and family afterwards. And I just feel like you just lose sight of what it is that we're here for. There's no point being stressed and having a horrible day. Just enjoy yourself.
Yeah, so you absolutely love it. But where do you think as well your drive, determination, resilience come from? Do you think you were born with it, or do you think you've kind of grown all of that over the years, after your injury and everything you had to go through?
Yeah, I look back at friends that I had growing up, and I feel like I look at and it's not to say that they've had bad lives and they've not achieved. They've followed paths that worked for them and they've chosen their opportunities and taken those. But I feel like definitely being able-bodied and then becoming para, you build up a level of something. I don't know if resilience is the right word for it, but you've had to overcome like a huge adversity in your life, and then to then recognise an opportunity and try and go for something else, you have to shift your mindset in a way that not many other people are going to have to do. And I feel like there's a distinct difference between people that are born with a disability and people that get a disability. I remember what it's like to run. I remember what it's like to run 100 metres. I remember what it's like to run on the wing playing rugby. And although I'll never get back to that, that doesn't mean that I will ever stop trying to achieve that. So I feel like, yeah, overcoming the adversity of all these things, it snowballs and turns you into not more, you roll with the punches. You've had bad news. That's not as bad as the bad news that I had the first time round. So it's all relative, but you gain character.
Yeah. Thank you for putting that so eloquently.
Thanks.
Final question I ask all my guests. If you could go back in time to when things were at their toughest, so let's say after your injury, when you're struggling with this new disability, what do you wish you could have told yourself?
I wish I could have told myself that, well, basically what I've said today, that there are just, that's the rugby's finished, but there are going to be other opportunities and you've just got to recognise the opportunities and you're going to have the time of your life.
Amazing. Thanks, Blaine. Thanks so much for coming today. You have the best moustache in sports. We haven't discussed that, but it is, amazing. But your passion, your motivation is really palpable. And I look forward to watching your journey onto LA 28.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
I really hope you enjoyed that chat with Blaine today. I certainly did. Please check in next week for another incredible episode of When Life Gives You Lemons.